And we're off. Welcome, everybody, to Commonwealth Connections. This is Dawson Field with my co host, as always, Weston Wilson. And today we have Mandy Higgins in the studio. Mandy is the executive director at the Lexington History Museum. Mandy, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am super excited about this one just because I'm from Lexington and love Lexington. I actually didn't know we had a Lexington History Museum, but there's partially kind of a reason for that. Do you just want to give a kind of a quick overview of that, and then we'll kind of jump into your whole story?
Yeah, sure. So we hear this a lot. Oh, I didn't know Lexington had a history museum. And as you said, there's a reason for that. The Lexington History Museum started as an organization in 1999. Pam Miller, who was the mayor at the time, incorporated the museum as part of a settlement, actually, for a development of where Stevens Courthouse is now. So after, all the background of that, in 2002, the museum opened in the old courthouse and was there for about 10 years. Now, the old courthouse at the time, you have to know, was not climate controlled. So there was no air conditioning. There was not a real heating unit. It was just a 1900 building of limestone for a museum. And in the course of that, those 10 years, the city was the owner of the building, discovered lead paint and mold and all kinds of things that are bad for humans and for artifacts. So they very correctly said, hey, y'all, you need to pack up. We can't have this. And so in 2012, the museum was closed. The courthouse went on to be redeveloped through a P3 partnership, so private-public funds. And that is where Zims is now, and Limestone Hall, the old courthouse. So in that development, the museum was without a home. So for 10 years, we were sort of in the wilderness. The collection was in a series of storage units across the city. The board attempted to keep it relevant and going. So we had pop-up exhibits at the downtown public library branch and in the government center and other places to showcase a little bit of the artifacts. They had a series of speakers and some other things, but a museum is a place that you go to experience something.
Right.
And for those 10 years, we didn't have that. And then in fiscal year 23, the mayor and the city council came together and said, if we're going to be this great American city that we are, we have to have a museum. And so they appropriated funds to bring us back. And we rented space. We have rented space now at 210 North Broadway, which is the Thomas Hunt Morgan House. We can talk about who Thomas Hunt Morgan was in a little bit. And we opened to the public in August of 2023 in that space, and we're going now. Only going to get bigger and better and have more things to be able to display and tell the broad history of Lexington from before our founding and our naming in 1775 all the way through today.
That's really cool. Now that you kind of gave that brief overview, tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into this role.
Yeah. So if you would have asked me 3 years ago, are you going to resurrect a museum in the town you love? I would have been like, what are you talking? No, absolutely not. I have been interested and been sort of historically minded my whole life. Learned to read really early, super precocious. The annoying kid with all the questions, that was me. You can ask my parents. They didn't love it. So I was really lucky as a high school student, to be a Governor Scholar. Kentucky has this incredible Governor Scholars program that provides about 1,000 rising seniors across the state the opportunity to experience college for 5 weeks. And depending on your scores, you then can get some funds to go to college. And when I did this in 2002, you got some pretty solid funds to go to college. I'm telling you this backstory because I was not thrilled to be a Governor Scholar when I learned that, because I grew up in Northern Kentucky where we don't think we're Kentuckians. Right?
Everyone traps you with Cincinnati.
We're Cincinnati. I was too good for Kentucky. There was no way that, this smart woman was going to stay in Kentucky, of all places. lo and behold, Governor Scholars works. And so the fun first introduced me to a much broader view of Kentucky and meeting people from across the state instead of my tiny little 3-county Northern Kentucky world. And then two, rightfully, I had a full ride scholarship to the University of Kentucky, and my parents told me that they would not pay if I could go to college for free at a world-class institution like the
I
University
mean,
of
that's
Kentucky.
understandable.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yeah, at 18-year-old, not thrilled about it. It has worked out for me. So I came to UK, thought I was going to be a journalist. Again, so many questions. Took Journalism 101 and hated it. The only W on my transcript is Journalism 101. Withdrew from Journalism 101 because I did not want to talk to people on the worst day of their lives. But I still had all of those questions, and so became a history major. Got a PhD at the University of Kentucky, graduated into the recession. So graduated undergrad into the recession of 2007, 2008. Stayed at UK because I had a job. My partner had a job. We thought we would leave again. Life didn't make it that way. And so I stayed and got my PhD and thought, like lots of folks who get their PhDs, that I would be a professor. And again, leave Kentucky and take my brilliance to the rest of the world. And quickly found out that I didn't actually like that. So I spent a year as a visiting professor at Center College, teaching some of the brightest students in Kentucky, doing really important work, but it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't gratifying at all for me. And that's not a knock. For people who can do that work, like teachers are incredible, professors are incredible. I am not incredible.
You need a passion for teaching.
Right, you
if you're
have
gonna
to
be a teacher.
love
It is
it.
a hard job.
It is very hard.
My wife tried it. She went to school, got her teaching degree, was working on her master's, started teaching, and was like, I don't like this at all.
It's good that she knew that. I think there are a lot of people who, like, you have that, you've told yourself you're going to do this for your whole life, so you stick it out in a way that just isn't fulfilling for anyone or great. So I figured it out pretty quickly. And when that contract expired, opportunity at the State Historical Society had opened. And a friend of mine, who's now the president of the Filson Historical Society in Louisville, called and was like, hey, I need you to, like, let's get the band back together. So I took that position and there found out that I really like being out with people and helping them understand why history matters and how they can make a difference in helping historical organizations be better and those sorts of things. So I did that for 8 years. And then this job opened up and I was tired of driving to Frankfurt every day. This is a post-pandemic opportunity. So I'd gotten used to sort of being at home and not having to commute. And for all of my early youth and young adulthood of sort of dissing Kentucky and not loving Lexington, I do in fact love it very, very much. It is home.
It grows on you.
It grows on you. It gets into you. Like everything we say about Lexington and having those, it holds you. It holds certain people. I was one of those people. And so the chance to come home, to reopen a museum that had sort of fallen into hard times and to do good history work in a town that I love very much and I think deserves that kind of work was something I couldn't turn down. So I got to come back and take over this position and really reinvent and rethink what the history of Lexington can be displayed and how it can be displayed and how we can get to it.
When you say come back, like come back working in Lexington,
Yes.
or you were living in Lexington, driving to Frankfurt? So it was really, you were still home.
That's correct. Yes. So
Yes.
when I say come back, I mean to come back working.
Yeah.
Once I moved to Lexington 1.5 million years ago, what feels like 1.5 million years ago, 22 years ago, I never left. Obviously went home for summer, home to my parents in Northern Kentucky for summers, traveled, those sorts of things. But Lexington has been the place that I lived. It's where my voter registration was. It's what my driver's license says since
Right.
2003. So the chance to have that, right, to have your home life and your work life sort of together was
Right.
really powerful and really it pulled in. And frankly, Frankfurt's fine, but that drive, it's only 16 miles, but it feels like 16 years when you
Yeah.
have to do it every day. And so that was a big motivator for me too.
I drive to Georgetown and Richmond often, and so yeah, it's not quite as far as Frankfurt, but it's almost.
Yeah.
It's almost. Well, Richmond's probably just about equal to Frankfurt, but for my house, but yeah, it can get old.
It does. It gets. I mean, I listened to a lot of audiobooks at that point, podcasts, all those things. It was useful time, but as you know, circumstances change and children getting older, it just wasn't something I wanted to keep doing. And so to have this chance to have really meaningful work in town, in a town that I really care about, in a field that it's hard to get jobs in, was just an opportunity that had to be taken.
Now, how did you find out that the role was open?
Good question. I was actually sort of soft recruited for it.
Okay.
So the board obviously posted that they had it, but I got a number of calls from folks that I knew who were like, "You're applying, right? Like you're gonna get this job, right? Go do it." So I don't know who the board had in mind when they put out the call to get this, but it was written in a way that was very much like, "Well, I have that skill and that skill and that skill, and I know this, and we're gonna go do it." So I had put in like you apply for any job, cover letter, all of those sorts of things, and then had what now I realize was like a weeding out call with a recruiter of like, tell me more and whatever to get to the point of an interview.
Yeah.
And that was different. The state doesn't work that way. It's not
Right.
how you get a job at the state or those sort of things. So for me, that was a really interesting moment of always being like knowing that you're always selling yourself, you're selling your product, you're selling your institution, even in what you think is this casual conversation about your interest in a job. This is because that's how it was billed, when in reality it was like, can this person do this? Is this what we're looking for? So that was really different, but really good sort of introduction to what is expected of someone who's going to run a really public organization.
Right.
We only have 2 employees, so it's me and one other person, which means I have to do that, right? You have to be the face.
Yeah.
So it officially reopened 23. So when did the decision start, and when did it all start kind of building up to that of, hey, we're going to reopen this, to then, all right, now we need to find people. What was kind of all the stuff leading into the reopening?
I don't know that I've ever been asked that question. That's a great question. So this funding was approved like June of 2022 for fiscal year 23, starting July 1st. I think they posted the need for the ED in August. So part of the funding package, convincing the city to reinvest, included this business plan that included hiring a professional staff. So the board had been thinking about it for 6 months before they could act, right? The job was posted probably in August. I had that weeding out call in early September, and then was hired October 1st of 2022. I had to give my 2 weeks, wrap up all my work for the Historical Society, and started October 22nd, 2022. And literally the first day, the conversation was, how do we open this museum?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So there wasn't even that plan in place. They were just hiring you for,
yes,
right, the organization that's just kind of been alive for a decade.
Yes.
Without a home.
Yes.
If you want to phrase it that way. And now they're asking you, how do we do this? And
Yeah.
you definitely were probably not expecting that question.
No, not so quickly. I am.
You were probably expecting some sort of plan.
Yes. Like, what do y'all think?
No, here's a little bit of training or what we're thinking. It's just, okay, great, welcome. Now, what do you want to do?
So there was a strategic plan. I would not have taken a job without there being at least a strategic plan. So there was some vision of we're going to have a physical museum. It's going to tell Lexington's history. But there was no facilities plan. There wasn't any of that sort of thing. So in some ways, it's really freeing because you can come in and say, oh, I get to put a whole vision into practice with a blank slate. And on the other side of that is like panic and just, like paralyzing fear because what if there are no plans? So how are we being evaluated? What is happening here? So that first couple of months I did a lot of fact finding, a lot of peer interviews. So for other museum organizations, other history organizations, what do you know about the Lexington History Museum's own organizational history? Where do you see us in this wider realm of cultural institutions in Lexington and in Central Kentucky? What is going really well for you all? Where's someplace that like you get pushed a lot, but you don't have the capacity that maybe we could step into? How can we work together to do those sorts of things? Because the last thing that cultural institutions need, in my mind, that cultural institutions need to do is step on each other.
Right.
We should be working together. So that informed then how we went about thinking about the stories we would tell in our museum versus the other museums in Central Kentucky, because we are really lucky to live in this culturally rich area where lots of people care. And so there are a lot of stories that are told already. So our goal when we decided to, after those conversations, I sort of took them all back in and this is what I heard and this is where we are, and presented it as the Lexington History Museum is a place where you can come and see a piece of your history, piece of who you are in Lexington. If you just got off the plane and your first stop was here, or if you're an 8th generation, some piece of our museum is going to speak to you. But we are not telling the stories that you get elsewhere. So when you come to the History Museum, we want you to get your toes wet in Lexington history and then ask us where you can get a deeper story. So there's one picture of Henry Clay in the entire museum because he's got a whole house. And their job, their mission is to tell Henry Clay's story and legacy. Why would we try to do that?
Right.
And that was sort of earth-shattering in some ways for folks to reevaluate what stories it's not that they didn't matter, but what stories could be told. We have smaller space than we did at the courthouse. So the courthouse was something like 40,000 square feet of interpreted space, and we're at a little less than 10. So that,
Makes a difference.
it's a huge difference. Right. But also, given just the changes in the world from 2012 to 2023, we don't have to do as much. If you have a question about Henry Clay and you don't want to go to Ashland, you should go to Ashland. But if you don't want to, you can Google that. I don't need to take up, 300 words to tell you about Henry Clay when this is one of the most well-known Lexington stories.
Right.
So we wanted to tell those lesser known or lesser understood pieces of Lexington's past because there was nowhere to get that information in a museum setting. And even things like Googling it would take a little bit more work than you would think. I joked earlier about all the PhD got me was 6 years of reading. What it really did was teach me how to ask a question and get the right answer, or the rightest, the closest to the right answer. So when I Google it, I can quickly piece that together. But that was 6 years of training. Lots of folks don't have that ability, and as the algorithms have changed and those sorts of things, it's harder to do. So we wanted to be the space to do that, to give you that succinct, Lexington started this way, this is what built it, these are some of the core industries, this is where we're going and why it looks like this, and then to shoot you back out to those deeper pieces of history because you love Mary Todd and you want to know about her childhood home, or whatever it might be. And then the other piece of that was, okay, so you're going to have that permanent experience that folks, it'll be the same every time. But then there's another space within the museum, our rotating gallery, that allows us to go deeper into more specific stories. And that changes over time. So right now we have an exhibit about the Women's Club of Central Kentucky. So women's history in the museum, and it spans from 1894 to about the 1980s and what this club did for Lexington. And very soon that's going to turn over into an exhibit for the 250th anniversary so it's Lexington's birthday year.
Yeah.
And what that exhibit will do is highlight even further some of those lesser known people, groups, organizations who have made change or made an impact in Lexington that we don't even realize or we don't think about. The example I like to give for this, and then I will let you ask a question and stop rambling. Part of this exhibit is going to include the men's basketball team. So it's March, whatever today is, 28th. We're in the middle of March Madness. Huge. For all of my hating of thinking was better than the University of Kentucky, now like my life is dominated by the men's basketball team. I am as, bleed as blue as everyone else. But that story is often only told as coaches or a certain athlete or something like that. There isn't that larger community story and the impact of the team on Lexington. So what we're going to do, of course, we'll highlight some, like Goose Givens went to Bryan Station. We'll highlight that. But that piece of the exhibit will talk about the community and the impact the team has on economics, on how Rupp Arena was built and why, on the sort of knowledge of Lexington, right? These bigger pieces. And now that there's no basketball museum, you can't get that history anywhere else. So it makes sense to be in our museum.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting because I haven't thought about it. I mean, like the sports programs at UK in general, their success does have an impact on Lexington. So it's going to help recruit more students if we have more prestigious or better programs, just because even if someone isn't an athlete, if they just have grown up as a UK fan, they're going to be more fond of UK. And then if they go to college here and then they get a job here and they stay here, like that's going to boost Lexington. So there's not just the economics of people going to the game and there's just money being brought into Lexington from holding games and people traveling to games. It's also like people drawn to the university and staying here and creating jobs and creating businesses, et cetera.
Exactly right. And the university has this really incredible undertold history of pushing Lexington further than it was. So there's a long history of UK. We don't have to get into it. But in the 20th century, as UK expanded and became even more of a world-class institution, particularly after World War I, its students helped recruit some of the biggest businesses in Lexington. So having a ready-made workforce allowed us to bring in things like the Veterans Affairs Hospital, Veterans Administration Hospital. IBM comes to Lexington partially because there's already a well-educated populace, and that's all UK and transy. Obviously, the public schools are great too, and private schools, we have an incredible education system, but UK is the biggest driver of that because it's the large, in itself, the largest employer in town. And being able, that's another example of one of those, like, we think we know, but let's peel back a little bit and learn, like, oh, you mean that, like, this was a coordinated effort to improve UK and improve job options within the city? Cool.
Yeah, and I don't know the true facts on this, but I would be shocked if UK basketball didn't bring in the most revenue, if not one of the top 5 revenues for the university. I mean, it's got to be a huge moneymaker. So that producing or creating a lot of money for the university to then recruit more students, upgrade more facilities, et cetera, is going to help the university be more successful.
Absolutely.
I wish we could say the same for our football program, but
maybe one day.
maybe one day.
One day we'll shake off that Bear Bryant curse.
Stoops, we'd love to have you on.
You can talk about RD1. Stoops is bourbon. Athletics is, I think, one of those places that gets maligned sort of lazily by folks who don't care to understand or don't want to understand or are just looking for a scapegoat. But athletics is, and the money behind athletics really makes a lot of things possible in town. And that's not just UK. That's also the high schools and, the legends and horse racing and all of those things. Mm-hmm. And that larger community piece of it that I do think we take for granted sometimes, of just a shared fandom or a shared experience of, for example, in 2012, I was in graduate school still. And we were at Euclid and Woodland when we won the national championship. That shared experience is part of my experience at UK.
Right.
And that's part of my parents' experience, even though, all of those things that bring us together. And that's what makes a community. And so if we can show that for someone who just got off a plane and the only thing they know about Lexington is like there's some basketball played here, we can help make that more meaningful.
Yeah.
And unpack some of that, like, well, all they care about is basketball. Yes, but the care is deeper, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I own the Culvers off Reynolds Road, and like anytime there's sports going on at LCA, like we're busier, and like that's a big impact. And so we had the owners of Sawgood on, and they talked about like the downtown location was profitable the most when UK, was having games and stuff, when there was events going on at Rupp. And if we didn't have a successful basketball program, we wouldn't have such a great like stadium. And if we didn't have that, then there wouldn't be as many concerts and we wouldn't be able to, it might not be big enough to have monster trucks. Like when I'm on TV watching like other colleges, like when we're playing an away game and I'm seeing their basketball court, I'm like, that looks really small. Like they're not hosting a monster truck show in there. Like there's no way. Like,
well, I think we get spoiled and don't realize how big Rupp is.
Yeah, Rupp is huge.
Rupp can fit a lot of people.
And it's got an incredible, now I'm just going to give you all the secrets. Rupp exists partially because Memorial was too small.
Right.
So Memorial Coliseum is where Cats played from 1950 until 1976. Historians claim they know dates. We don't always. We usually have notes. So Memorial, when it opened, was like 12,000 seats. And there would be hundreds of people outside Memorial trying to get in every game. And so as the city thought about urban renewal and thought about how to grow it the next step, they knew the basketball program needed something too. So the university came together with city planning to make this showcase, right? So we can showcase University of Kentucky basketball, but the convention center then does all of the other things you're talking about because of it. And you get this very large organization that continues today to pay off for the city. We can host NCAA opening tournament games, right? Those first two rounds, the Visitors Center said expected to bring something like a $10 million impact in the city for teams that aren't ours.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, and you can't, it's an interesting way of getting at what community means and how a town grows.
Yeah, and a lot of universities couldn't even imagine hosting March Madness games.
No.
There's no way. Like they just don't have enough seats. And a lot of times bigger cities like Indianapolis or just professional like NBA centers are getting these, March Madness games where we're special to where we have actually a facility that's large enough to host it, but we're still a university.
That's right. That's right. It's an incredible piece. And moving it off campus was a choice, and it has paid off for
Yeah.
us.
And now,
And I'm sure at the time it was a hard choice.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Well, now, I mean, Memorial Coliseum, we're using it tons. It's busy. We just had to renovate it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, that's bringing more attention to the volleyball and the women's basketball. And I feel like it's just getting booked up again all the time.
Yeah, it's an incredible, and all of those are not just stories about fans or stories about communities or stories about the university. That's also architecture firms and funding ideas and bankers and city planners and all of these other pieces that come into that. So you're building these layers of influence and of impact beyond the surface of, oh, cool, they have a 20,000 seat arena, or they just renovated their old gym that was built in the 1950s, right? It's more than that. And it showcases the ways that the city, even when we think this is it's just Lexington, whatever, is actually this really robust, really interconnected organism that is constantly relying on itself and on pieces to make itself better and to grow.
Yeah. Well, I think UK's done a really good job of utilizing space. There's been, God, I went to college in 2012, and campus has changed a lot since then, and it's really cool to see how there's still a lot of the same old, but there's a lot of things that have been remodeled. There's a lot of new, and it's not like the footprint has drastically grown.
That's right.
But it's just been utilized a lot better.
Yes, and that footprint is pretty much, the core of campus is the core of campus when it moved from Ashland, the Henry Clay Estate, to be on South Limestone.
Yeah.
So more than 100 years of history sitting right there. And do you all know this? There used to be a lake in front of the main building.
No, I did not know that.
I did not know that.
Oh, I kind of wish that we still had the lake in the main building. So Patterson Drive, where you would turn off of South Limestone, that whole area is infill. There was a lake there.
Like a natural lake?
Like an actual lake.
Like not like a pond, like a
Well,
lake. Well,
probably a pond.
okay.
Pond is probably a better
Large
word.
pond.
A large pond. It
There
was
we go.
big. And like there are pictures in the university archives of students in rowboats on the pond.
Wow.
And now, there's an empty Arby's.
An empty Arby's.
The big blue Arby's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That property is yeah. I wish the city would actually let Dutch Bros go in there. I think it was Dutch Bros that was trying to go in there.
I think it was, yeah.
I know that they were concerned about like drive through, and that was like a busy intersection and everything, and but that would have been such a good like value add to that area, and I just don't know what's going to go in there.
Yeah.
It's a tough corner.
It is. I'm glad I'm not on the planning commission and don't have to make those
Yeah.
don't have to weigh in on those decisions.
Speaking of location, to bring it back to Lexington History Museum, how did you all find the location you're in and like decide on that?
Yeah, that's a really serendipitous answer I have for you. So the 210 North Broadway is owned by the Bluegrass Trust for Historic Preservation. They took over ownership from the Women's Club of Central Kentucky in 2014. And until we signed the lease in October of 2023, the trust had been using it sort of as a rental space in their offices. Rental spaces are really demanding on employees. Especially spaces that aren't, designed to be a rental institution. So this historic building that you can rent for a wedding or you can rent for a meeting is staffed by historic preservation specialists. That's such a drain. It's a drain on the staff, a very small staff. You have to have people there, all those sorts of things. So at the same time that we're looking for a facility, the trust is looking for a stable long-term rental that won't require that, turnover all the time. So the board went through 15 or 20 historic properties in the downtown space. What could it be? What's the rent? What are those sorts of things? What would it need to be? What kind of renovation would need to go into it? And at the same time, the trust is like, who could we get to rent this that needs a very large auditorium and doesn't want to do a bunch of events and those sorts of things? We were able to come together. What's great about that location for us is it is downtown. It's a little bit out of the core of Short Street. It's 2 blocks out of Short Street, and it's not far.
Yeah.
But the Lexington and people have a thing. There are 18 parking spots, so downtown parking, which is unheard of, especially for a museum to be able to have that. And it's 2 big squares, which is perfect for a museum space to be able to operate in, right? It's not cut up into a bunch of offices and those sorts of things. So they signed the lease without knowing what was going to happen in some ways. So we were given the space. I came in with a signed lease. This is the space. Make it a museum. The other great part of it is that because it's attached to a historic home, we had a built-in story to start with. So we could tell the story of Thomas Hunt Morgan, who's the first Kentuckian to win a Nobel Prize. He figured out how he and his team, and especially his wife, who does not get any credit, figured out how genes mutate using fruit flies and the eyes of fruit flies. So a fruit fly mutation would go from a white eye to a red eye, and he unpacked how all of that happened in science. He grew up in that house. His grandmother was very wealthy, Henrietta Hunt Morgan, who is the daughter of the purported first millionaire west of the Alleghenies, whose name is Robert Hunt, John Hunt, Mr. Hunt. He made all his money in hemp and enslaving people. So Henrietta, his daughter, built the house that the museum is in now for her son, Charlton. Charlton was a little bit of a ne'er-do-well, sort of fell out with the family. Henrietta, my favorite, this has nothing to do with Thomas Hunt Morgan, but I love it so much. Henrietta Hunt Morgan wrote like a 30-page will, and she was very cheap as a rich woman, and kept a detailed list of debts owed to her. And so Charlton, couldn't get it together in the 1880s, was deeply indebted to his mother. And she added codicils to her will of Charlton doesn't get X because he needed money for Y, and Charlton doesn't whatever, and blah, blah, blah. So there were like 11 codicils, and all of them are Charlton doesn't get X. Because that's who she was. So they lived in this, what was called a townhouse at the time. It's an Italianate. It's pretty small for an 1870s build. It's still insane. It's still an insane house with really beautiful wood banisters and those sorts of things. But it's only 4 bedrooms-ish. And then Thomas grew up in the attic away from his mother and his grandmother. He didn't love all of the ladies who lunch that were a part of that life. And he did some of his earliest experiments there. So we have still in the house the dry sink, which just means it's not plumbed. There's no water. In the attic where he did some of those experiments. We use that for interpretation. He graduated from the Agricultural and Mechanical College, which is now UK. He had his undergrad and his master's there, and then went to Johns Hopkins, and from there taught at Columbia, and then founded the Cal Poly biology department, where he died. But he won the Nobel Prize. So we had a story to tell.
Yeah.
And then you could build around a person in a story, and you could build around that. And it goes back to all of what we were talking about, right? this sort of rich guy that's made possible through the education system that is the University of Kentucky, and then goes on to do this incredible thing because UK was there. And at the time, the university also had a high school. So he was not only a graduate of the college program, but he graduated high school from University High. And this is before public schools are really a thing. It's sort of surprising that he went there instead of one of the like private sort of hoity-toity schools he could have gone to in central Kentucky. He went to University High.
It's interesting. I did not know any of that.
Yeah.
So I'm learning a lot here.
It's I'm not a very fun party guest because I'm like, do you want every detail of whatever you're asking about? I have it. I will give them all to you.
Sounds like a fun party guest. I don't like reading about history, but I like learning about history. So
that's actually really common.
Yeah.
We hear, so the other thing about, thinking about what a museum should be, there are like 3 lanes of museum goers, visitors. There's a visitor who goes because they want a book on a wall. They want to learn, they want every detail, and they want all of it in front of them. And then there's the person who goes because they want to see cool stuff. And so they don't really care about the words that you have on the wall, but you better have something like cool for them to see or touch or experience. And then there's the third one is the person who wants the story, but they want the story given to them, told to them. So they want like a docent-led experience, which is probably why you like bourbon tours, right? Because someone's telling you that story.
Well, I kind of like all 3.
Yeah.
So I feel like I fit all 3 of those because I will read every detail on the plaque or whatever, and I want to see the cool thing, and I also want a little bit of like somebody like telling me something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And that's for historians, I'm actually a terrible museum goer. I don't want to read any words. Tell me why this matters so I can move on to the next thing.
I think that's how I am. I'd rather just see an object or whatever it is, picture, and have someone just tell me about it. Like, I will remember it better if someone says it to me than if I'm reading it.
Yes, that's the most common museum experience for folks. They want the stuff.
Yeah, I have FOMO, so I'm afraid that if somebody tells me something, they leave something cool out, then I might be able to read it on the wall. Now, I won't read a book about it, but I want to like read the highlight reel.
Yeah. So you are the ideal Lexington History Museum visitor.
Feel privileged.
As a bad museum goer, it was really hard for me and for the team at first to be like, okay, what's too much? What's not enough? How do we balance this? And so there are a lot of words in our museum because we want people to get that story.
Right.
And because at the start, we didn't have as many artifacts. So we had to fill in some, we had some cool stuff, but they weren't very big or it wasn't a full piece. And so we had to fill in around it. As we've grown, we've been able to sort of step back. And while there are still a lot of words, because we want you to know the nuance in the story, there's also a lot more stuff to look at and to experience. And then we're moving sort of where we're going next is that docent experience of how do we do tours in a not very big space? How are we available to our visitor without being like, do you want to know exactly how we figured this out? That sort of balance of who the museum goer is and how we interact with them is something we're still ironing out.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it takes like time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like everything else.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about some of the important pieces that you guys have found, not just from the beginning, but even like later after you opened, that you've added in there and its significance to Lexington.
Yeah. One of my favorite objects that you would think is like, whatever. We have a 1925 almost concert-sized grand piano. It's a piano. Who cares? Except that it's this incredible story of the Women's Club of Central Kentucky, actually, bought this piano in 1925 because they were one of the few organizations putting on piano concerts and bringing in pianists to Lexington. And so they were having to rent them or find like, salon pianos or whatever else. So they took out a note. They like took out a loan to get this piano and then did a bunch of fundraisers and things to pay it off. But they've had it since 1925. It lived in the Lafayette Hotel, which is now the government center. And like all true white ladies, they didn't want anyone else touching it. So they put a lock on it at one point. So you can see where they like messed with it for the lock. When the Lafayette Hotel closes in 1962. And the club obviously has no place to meet at that point. And they eventually purchased the Thompson Morgan House. And so they brought the piano with them. So this piano is moved across town. It's still in our possession. We can still use it. It's still there. And then we can not only interpret their story and how they brought music and culture to Lexington, but also the Lafayette, which is this unbelievable. If you talk to anybody over the age of, say, there aren't that many people left at this point, but over the age of 80 who've been in Lexington the whole time, they're going to tell you about the Lafayette and about going to the Lafayette to go for high tea or to have a prom or to be at cotillion or just to stay. So it gets at that nostalgia without having to sort of succumb to the nostalgia. We can talk about the importance of the space and the space for individuals without focusing on an individual story. I love objects that allow us to do that. We have the object that I was least excited about, but people love the most. We have one of the first IBMs that came off the line, the Selectric.
Oh, yeah. Really?
So IBM is truly the unsung hero of the second half of the 20th century in Lexington. Radically changes Lexington, brings in lots of new folks, and we get new neighborhoods and all kinds of things. But the biggest technology piece that they do is all the Selectrics that are produced, or at least a piece of them is produced in Lexington, including the type ball, which changes the way that typewriters work. So before it was individual keys, the type ball is all the characters are on the ball, and the ball moves around to make the indent on the page. So we had a very large typewriter collection at the Lexington History Museum. And part of that was because IBM bought every commercial typewriter available to study it as they were building their models. Now, we don't need that. We're a small organization. So what we have kept is a model of every Selectric and then wheelwriter that was produced in Lexington. And we have a working Selectric 2 that you can type on.
Oh, that's cool.
And so not every person that comes through the door, but lots of folks that come through the door of all ages get jazzed about this typewriter. Older folks are telling us about how they learned to type on one, or I had this on my desk when I was a secretary, or this is what I wrote my vowels on, or whatever it was. And younger people, and especially children, are so taken by this technology that they've never, like, oh my God, it goes to the paper, and how do I erase? Sweetie. Like, I know you've only ever done word processing on your phone. You can't erase.
Right.
This is
Well,
a typewriter.
White out.
Yeah.
The generations now, I mean, everything's electronic.
Yes.
That it almost adds to the fascination of these historical mechanical items, right?
That's exactly right.
Because it's just not technology we use in everyday use to, a
Right.
child growing up, right?
Yeah.
So
Maybe they've seen it in some show, or they're Taylor Swift fans, and so they've who uses a typewriter anyway, but they have no concept of this being like.
I mean, if you're 40 or younger, you've probably never used one.
That's right. Yeah, I in that job at the Historical Society in the first week, I had to use a typewriter to fill out a postal service form because at the time the postal service hadn't digitized these things, and it was mind-boggling.
Yeah, I bet.
What? It is 2014. why am I doing this? So there are, places where typewriters or dot matrix printer, those sorts of things still exist. But for most folks, it's something so different.
Oh, I can't imagine even like a high schooler now doing it because even me, like I type so fast just texting. I'm letting autocorrect fix it. I'm not like catching
Oh,
the
yeah.
mistake. I'm just like, let's go as fast as possible and it can fix itself of like, nope, you can't make a mistake.
Nope. It
Here,
used to be
take
a
your time.
whole major, secretarial studies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, if I didn't have autocorrect, I'd be screwed. I mean, like, and now that like Google does like grammar correct too, oh, that's like game changer.
Oh, I feel like
you know?
half the time I send an email, there's supposed to be an attachment, and I'll try to hit send, and then it's like, you mentioned an attachment in your email, but you didn't attach one. Would you like to attach? I'm like, yes, I would.
Yeah.
'Cause
Thank
like
you
half
for
the
saving
time-
my butt.
Yeah,
Yes.
saves my butt pretty much every day.
Yes. We also have in that same area of the museum the first IBM laptop, which
Oh, wow.
was also the lead engineering team was based in Lexington before they were moved to somewhere in Texas. It is a brick. It's so heavy, but they advertise it as this portable computer.
What year is that from?
80 something.
Yeah, I don't think of a laptop back in the 80s.
Oh, no, not at all.
So
It-
like, I'd be really curious what it looks like.
It's cream. The outside of it is cream colored.
Everything was.
Everything.
Everything, right? Like standard cream.
Yeah.
It runs on 2 floppy disks. So there's like the DOS system on a floppy disk and then whatever you were processing. The screen is probably, I don't know, 8 inches, like tall.
Oh my gosh.
It's very small. It's got that green, like Doogie Howser background. And then an attached keyboard that's more like a typewriter keyboard than what we would think of as the keyboard.
Okay.
Interesting.
And then it had a battery pack that it was another 8 pounds, like huge black battery with all the cables. But they sold it with a backpack. So you traveled with this whole thing.
Yeah.
And you could attach a printer to it.
I mean, honestly, though, like for the time, like that was
Cutting edge.
cutting edge, and that would probably be very useful. I mean, like I remember even in the mid 2000s, like we finally got our first like laptop, and it wasn't like a true desktop, and like like transporting the desktop would have been a disaster. Like all those cords, and I mean the monitors were still like the big, massive, deep monitors. So like flat screens weren't a thing. So you'd need a backpack for the monitor, or like a bag for the monitor. You need a backpack for the tower, and then you need like probably another bag for the mouse and the keyboard and
Yep.
the cords.
When I moved out of the dorms, like when you went home at Christmas, you took your desktop with you. So I had like a box of my desktop in 2003 when I was going home from. So yes, you're exactly right. These laptops were such an extravagant thing.
Right.
Like you, of course.
And they
could
were
get
kind of
them.
crappy.
They were, yeah. They didn't have terrible battery life. You couldn't save anything on them. They had like, 8 megs of memory. It was
Right.
nothing. So yes, it was from a technological side. It was this incredible breakthrough. From a thinking about it in 2025 side as like a portable, easy to carry around thing. It is a wild piece of technology, but it's very cool. And it came in to us from the son-in-law of the lead engineer. So that was his model,
Oh,
which is
wow.
very cool.
That's cool.
The other thing about objects is most of the time they're just things, but who owned them or what did it mean to them? That's how you build the story around it. And that's really incredible.
Yeah. So he donated it.
His son-in-law donated it after he had passed, sort of in his honor for
Yeah.
what he had done to make, that piece of technology possible.
That's really cool. So tell us a little bit about the story of IBM, because I'm a little bit more curious now. You said it really was like, you say the saving grace or of Lexington?
So maybe not the saving grace, but
second
definitely
wind.
the sort of, I would say it's like the catalyst for the second half of 20th century development. So IBM comes to Lexington in the 1950s, about the same time as the urban service boundary and the starting of New Circle Road, which at the time was called the Beltline. They are looking for a place to build typewriters. They had been based in Poughkeepsie, New York. And they're recruited here by the Chamber of Commerce, by particularly the sort of lead of, so I think Bob Quick is now called the executive director of the chamber, but the person who recruited IBM in the 50s was called the executive secretary of the Chamber of Commerce. And he gave them this pitch that Lexington was where they needed to be based because we are at the crossroads of travel and shipping. We have an educated workforce, and we're not unionized because this is the South. So he recruits them in, high-paying jobs, and they bring a lot of their executives with them from New York. And that changes Lexington because you've now got this executive class of folks who are coming into town, and they need a place to live. So we get, larger subdivisions. So the 50s sprawl of subdivisions is driven in some ways by these IBM executives coming in. Big grocery chains and the changes in the food scene. My favorite anecdote for that, so when IBM spins off Lexmark in the 90s, Lexmark exists because it was a subsidiary of IBM, and IBM spins them off as a individual organization. The Herald Leader did a retrospective with IBM employees who came in the 50s. And they talked to the first president of IBM Lexington. And he said, well, here's the thing. When I came to Lexington, there were no bagels in this town. I had to drive to Cincinnati to get my bagels. Right? He's coming from Poughkeepsie, New York.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, is he being facetious? I'm sure there were bagels in Lexington somewhere, but not to his standard, right? That he needed to go to a real city to get bagels. I feel like Southland Bagel and Great Bagel and all of these places have a few things to say to this man in 2025,
Yeah.
right? Like we've become much more of a cultured or foodie scene.
Right. You don't feel like anything's missing from
Exactly.
Lexington nowadays.
Right.
There's something for everyone.
Exactly. And so IBM had a big push in that. They also helped raise wages overall because these were higher paying jobs. By 1970, 1971, through the work of the NAACP, it's a fully integrated workforce. And so African-American Lexingtonians are getting some of the best paying jobs in the city through IBM. And it sets the stage for industrial development that is focused on science, mechanics, technology, not on polluting industries. Now, they're still, it's not like they're not polluting, right? But it's a different kind of industry growth so that now we're doing white collar tech, right? And we're still doing that today.
Instead of like coal.
Instead of coal or cars or
Horse farms.
Yeah. And so that piece of it is a really interesting sort of downstream output to, you recruited IBM and you recruited hospitals and you recruited these sort of organizations that are not what was recruited, say, into Louisville or into Cincinnati, even though it's the same sort of crossroads of transportation, access, all of those sorts of things. It's a different, it really changed the shape of the city. And then the other piece of that is, so IBM, as you know, sat where Lexmark sits today. Like that is the historic footprint of it. So it's right there at New Circle, in the development of New Circle. It helped push that original piece of New Circle into, much to the frustration of the chamber secretary, by the way, at the time, making it more industrial, right? That's why there's stoplights there, because people that were working at IBM needed a place to eat and to buy things and to do those sorts of things. The chamber secretary wanted the Beltline to be like the rest of New Circle, where there are no stoplights.
Mm.
But because of when it was developed, he wasn't able to make that happen. And so they have this sort of symbiotic relationship that, again, is one of those, like, when you start when you start peeling the pieces of the onion, like, how am I going to get to the core of this? There's so many pieces. And it's something that, as a cultural historian, as someone who's more interested in people, was really hard for me at first to grasp, like, no, these industries matter. The story of this matters so much to you being able to talk about the people.
Right.
And so it's a cool piece. And IBM, it really can't be overstated. Anytime I'm asked what is the most important piece of 20th century Lexington, it's that and the merged government, which the city's merged government is such the other piece of why Lexington is where it is today.
What do you mean by merged government?
So Lexington operates as an urban county government. So we are, all of Fayette County is one system. That's why you have, before that, we were a city and a county. And so you would have, the city county had duplicative services. So you'd have the city fire department and the county fire department and the city police and the county police. And you'd have a mayor and we still do have a county judge executive, but they have a much smaller purview. County schools and city schools, all of those sorts of things. And in 1972, the county and the city citizens voted to merge the government. And that took place, and that actually occurred in 1974. We've been operating as a merged government since then, the first and still the best in Kentucky. And the biggest piece of that is that we don't have those duplicative services.
Yeah.
It's a streamlined government.
It just makes a lot more sense.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. But most of Kentucky does not operate that way. I think there are only like 8 urban county governments in the state.
Oh, wow.
And Louisville didn't has never merged fully, and didn't really even start talking about merging until the 90s. So they still have like little neighborhood. They're not neighborhoods. They are little towns that have their own mayors.
Yeah, so like
Goshen has its own mayor.
Yeah.
We don't have that, which is great.
Yeah.
Because you can just get things done. And it really changed the way that we can recruit business in, because you only pay, your taxes are different.
Right.
And it's one entity you're working with, not the county and the city and the neighborhood and the whatever and the whatever and the whatever. So it's a huge
I'm
change.
surprised there's only 8 counties you said in Kentucky doing it.
Don't quote me on that.
But roughly.
Yeah.
Because I feel like with Kentucky, there's so many counties. Like, we know where people are by the county, which I've noticed is different than, like, all right, if it's a friend that lives here now, but they're from Ohio, they're talking more cities. Whereas in Kentucky, we're like, oh, yeah, that's this county.
Yeah.
Right? We almost say the county first.
Yeah, I guess I can see, like, there are multiple cities within some counties, even though we do have a lot of small like, our counties, we have too many counties, in my opinion. But
and that's what I'm saying. I feel like when I think of a county, I think of, there's this city there. And you almost wrap one city to one county.
Right.
For the most part, in my mind, there's probably some smaller cities.
But like
know,
Jasmine County, for instance, like there's Wilmore.
Right.
And there's Nicholasville.
That's right.
And so that would be Wilmore and Nicholasville saying, we're only going to have one mayor.
That's right.
And so that does kind of change things.
Right. It does.
So, I mean, there are those.
Because
like most counties,
I could see a lot of people in Wilmore being like, no, I don't want to be looped in with Nicholasville.
That's right.
Like, we want to have our own, we want to be able to vote our own person to be over our city.
Yes. And that is different. Fayette County didn't have
Right.
it was Lexington and
That's
then
it.
Fayette County.
Right.
So there wasn't that piece of it.
Like Scott County, there's not Shelbyville.
Stamping ground?
Stamping Ground, and then there's the other one right up the Sadieville.
Oh, Sadieville, yep.
So there's like 2 or 3 different cities in Cynthiana is different
I
county.
think it's in Harrison County.
Yeah. So there's 3 different cities in Scott County.
Right.
And so they would all have to surrender to one. Yeah. That would change things a lot. So that makes sense. Right. It makes sense. It just, yeah.
Yeah. It is a very
And people that live in those small towns want the reason that they're in that small town is they want control.
yes, yeah. And that, how do you give it up, and how do you, like judge exec then is the county, basically the mayor of the county, right? Well, the judge execs don't want to give up their power either, so you have to. It's a whole thing.
So when was it that Lexington went to the merged government?
1974.
74, okay.
January 1st, 1974. So we're in our 51st year of merged government. We have one mayor, 15 council members. They oversee the entirety of the county. We do have a judge exec. Her job is just much smaller than it is in other places, so mostly roads.
That makes sense. It makes sense why other counties haven't switched over in my head now that I'm like thinking about it. Because at first I was like, well, that's really silly and inefficient. But like people live in small towns for a reason. Yes. They want to have a say in their town and their neighborhood. And by voting that, you're giving up control. But for Fayette County specifically, clearly it didn't make sense because we have one city.
Right. Well, and for being a town of 330,000 people, Lexington really is just a small town.
Yeah.
Like that is the other piece of, and some of that is it's not the merged government, but it is the merged government in the sense that like we're all in it together and we're all sort of experiencing the same thing. And because of things like the urban services boundary, what is it, like 70% of Lexingtonians live within the boundary?
Right.
So we're a huge county, but we're all living pretty close together and experiencing that together.
And we're not expanding that far out. We can't.
So yeah.
I get it's the mix of urban surface boundary, merged government, IBM, all at that time really did kind of transform Lexington into how it can grow and develop now.
That is my argument. And it is, again, those pieces that you don't, like we think, oh, maybe it was just one person that did that, or it's just UK, or it's just IBM, or it's just the government. It's all of it working together. And it's hard to see that if it's not all brought kind of in front of you.
Right.
It's easy to just look in one space or one way. So that was the other piece for the museum, for us to be able to say like, oh, you don't understand why Lexington looks like it does? Here, let me show you. Let me show you why you saw horses as you drove in or as you flew over Keeneland. Why is there so much green? I can tell you. And you can see it right in front of us. And that's been really cool.
Right. It's all the different things, how they work together, but also what things led to another thing being made. I mean, we've had a couple of the breweries on, like Country Boy and Mere Twin, and talking about in the kind of brewery boom early 2010s, they all started, and then basically UK goes on this national championship run, and they were talking about how that honestly kind of just helped them start. Like it helped create this culture that now that's one of the big things to do in Lexington, right? There's so many breweries, and that's a very big social aspect now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is it's so, it's like deeply edifying for me as a academic and a fan to be able to bring those sorts of things together, right? That, these things you love about Lexington were made possible because of something that maybe you don't love about Lexington, right? Like we're all in it together, and there are things that we don't have to love about our past or about our present, but it makes where we're going possible. And that's been the other thing for us to remind folks that even in the tragedy or the challenges of the past, we can't be where we are without understanding what those were and why it happened.
So since we are typically more entrepreneur focused, what are some other businesses that have made a large dent in Lexington?
Yeah. Large dent is, there are so many that are, have been for a long time. So like Millwards, for example. Millwards Funeral Homes started out as cabinet makers in 1825. And then as frontier death and cholera and lots of other things came in the 1830s, they switched almost entirely to being, to producing caskets and then becoming funeral directors. So that's a 200-year-old business that is deeply historic, but exists became what it was out of necessity.
Right.
So they were building cabinets, but we need caskets to bury people, and then we need a place for people to mourn, and we've got this person, and we can do that, and that's how millwards grew. For one I like to talk about that is actually wasn't all that impactful, but is like random. We had a car. There was a Lexington motor car that was built here for 1 year, and then went to Indianapolis.
Really?
But they built a Lexington car in the early at the turn of the 20th century.
Wow.
So we have been an automotive place
For a year.
for a year. But
Well, yeah, I
even
mean-
now, like having that technology,
Right.
right? That it was something, manufacturing was something that was real for us.
And obviously not outside of Lexington. We think Toyota's in Georgetown.
Right.
Does play a big part here.
Exactly.
There's a lot of people here that's what their job is. They work at the Toyota plant.
Or the subsidiaries of that, who produces the leather, who produces the wiring, who produces the chips and all those sorts of things. So we've been a manufacturing town from sort of the beginning. One of the earliest industries that sort of pops up and kind of goes back and forth is actually mustard production. So mustard is a plant, but was grown for medicinal purposes before it was a condiment. And there was a man named Burroughs who was a very famous mustard producer, and his name was attached to mustard well into the 20th century. So we've had food. We've had a lot of food products. Peanut butter. Do you know why we have a Jif plant?
I don't know why.
I don't know why.
I just know we do.
I love the Jif plant story. First of all, it smells great.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
Lexington, a smell of Lexington, a sensory experience of Lexington has to include the peanuts roasting from the Jif plant. Peanut butter was mass produced, like most food, and started being mass produced in the 20th century after World War II. William T. Young, well-known entrepreneur in Lexington, well-known philanthropist, started Big Top peanut butter at the plant that is now the Jif plant. He sold Big Top. He started that in 1946. He sold Big Top to P&G in the 50s. They continued to produce the label Big Top for about 5 years. So they added a bit of sugar to it. And then that got spun into Jif. And when P&G sold Jif to Smuckers, they continued to produce. So that is the one of 2 or 3 Jif plants in the country
Wow.
at 3rd and Winchester.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So we have this long history of food product, bourbon, of course, and then other, random things. The steamboat was invented by a Lexingtonian
Really?
in the
Did not know that.
early 1800s. He patented it. So, we say he's the inventor. Maybe someone did it first. The official. Patented steamboat technology. And then there are all of the other just side businesses that you don't even think about as they're part of our lives now, but
Yeah.
someone had to start them, like Millwards, like Keeneland and the Association Track. The Jockey Club starts in the early 1800s and was one of the first organized jockey clubs in the country. Red Mile, harness racing. And the piece of that's truly entrepreneurial and interesting is the sales. Right? Racing has been going on since the beginning of time. But both Red Mile and now Keeneland and Fasig-Tipton exist because of their sales. Seeing the niche in the market that we can look at bloodlines and do blood stock and figure out how folks produce fast horses and make millions of dollars in doing that makes Lexington that horse capital.
Because horses are sold here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Horses are sold here. Horses are bred here. If most people know us for basketball, it's really the equine industry that's running so much sort of behind the scenes, the
Right.
amount of money and the change that happens because of that.
Right. And Keeneland brings in money, but the horse sale,
Yes.
like the races bring in money, but the horse sales really bring in, a lot of tax dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, there are so many. We were talking about James Pepper earlier. Pepper and his wife were very entrepreneurial in their work, both him starting the distillery in Lexington, though he was a little bit of a, let's call him a risk taker.
Yeah.
He got himself a little illiquid, in a little bit of trouble for a while. But he figured out sort of the limestone distillation piece and finding it's not quite an aquifer, but finding the right well to pump in and not use Town Branch. And part of how he figured that out was because his wife, who was a thoroughbred, who raced thoroughbreds and raised thoroughbreds on our farm at Meadowthorpe, also found a limestone whatever that made her horses stronger. Like, she tracked that it was making her horses' ankles stronger.
Wow.
And so they knew also then that they needed clean water for the bourbon. You can't use Town Branch for that. We all know that it was polluted and gross. So they figured out how to pipe it in, from a clean well.
That's awesome.
So it's those little pieces of innovation that then get pulled into the next and the next to the next.
Do you guys talk about Spaldings?
We not a lot. We actually have one of our campaigns, social media campaigns for the 250 is on this day.
Mm-hmm.
So in April is the anniversary of Spalding's founding.
Yeah.
And it'll be there. Yeah.
That'll be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like a large business. It's not like it's producing a ton of jobs.
Right.
But it's the oldest donut shop
Yeah.
in Lexington. And it's really cool. I mean, it's just, I really wish it was still in like its OG location.
Yes.
Like, that'd be even more like awesome. But like, they just started taking cards. Like, it's not been that long that they still only did cash. And it's just, I don't know, like, you can't experience Lexington, in my opinion, unless you've had a Spalding's donut. Like, it's just part of
Absolutely.
Lexington.
I think that is really an undersold part of Lexington's like food and food culture is such a deep part of the city. And it's something that I don't think we give enough credit to in the way that it maintains community and maintains community history. You going to Joe B's, right? Like, that is somewhat kind of an experience you have to have if you're in Lexington, or going to Trackside and getting something from the Track Kitchen, having some burgoo. That's a piece of it, and Spalding's, and there are any number of other places that you could call on. And then in our more recent past and our current, so many of our leading voices outside of the city, like, who take us to the world, are food entrepreneurs.
Right.
Like Crank and Boom and Tuk Tuk and all of these places.
Malone's.
Yeah. All of these places spread Lexington through their product.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
Which, I mean, we had Malone's on, and they're like doing something really incredible, in my opinion, with Drake's. So, I mean, they're taking that nationwide, and there's locations in Florida and Texas and Tennessee and Indianapolis and North Carolina, South Carolina. And it's really cool to see, like, that was our only like prime steakhouse for a long time. And then now we have Tony's and Jeff Ruby's too. But like, it's just, there's something nostalgic about going to Malone's.
Yes.
And it just like feels like home, I guess you could say. Like, I love Tony's and I love Jeff Ruby's, but there's something about just being at Malone's. It just feels like home, and it's cool that it's local, and they really are building. I mean, they have 30 plus Drake's locations now. So like, their corporate office is growing,
Right.
because they're growing,
Yeah.
and it's making Lexington stronger because they're producing more jobs.
That's right. And then, the person who's eating Drake's in Florida, who's never thought about coming to Lexington, is given a little bit of an insight, like because something is named after, something here or whatever to come and to be a part. So it's also growing the tourism industry of that,
Right.
which is an incredible piece. Food, the other thing about food, now that I'm thinking about it, do you know where Long John Silver's started?
Lexington.
Lexington. Do you know where? Do you know where the
No,
original was?
I don't know.
Southland Drive.
Really?
Really?
It was on Southland Drive. So now it's the hair studio on Southland, just past the train tracks.
Yeah.
But that is the original Long John Silver's. So we have been feeding America since the 60s in that
Right.
way. Again, that sort of piece of, you don't think about it. Fazoli's
Yeah.
is
Fazoli's.
based here, based here. And those are major real big major corporations, but they're Lexingtons. And because they're Lexingtons, we're quiet about it, right? We're not like, it's not a big, oh my God, we're going to be so proud of
Now,
whatever.
doesn't A&W have their headquarters here
Their
too?
headquarters are here.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
didn't start here, but their headquarters are here.
Yeah. And then we have Tempur-Pedic.
We have
or Tempur-Sealy.
yeah.
Yeah. Timber Sealy now.
But
yeah,
but it started out as Tempur-Pedic,
Yep.
and they started here.
they did.
Yeah.
And Link Belt.
Yep. Link Belt's
Um,
huge.
Link Belt is a huge and started here. And I think it's
Alltech.
all tech. I think the chamber lists 13 international headquarters in Lexington, something like that. Rubicon started here, the trash company. I'm trying to. The chamber would know. CommerceLex.com
Yeah.
has a list for you. But it is such an important piece of how we grow and how, while maintaining who we are, right? That those thoughtful ways of bringing in business and bringing in jobs is still rooted in what Lexington is. And going back to that merged government piece, part of that is because we all have that one vision, right? You're not fighting between the county and the city to say who you are.
Right.
It's all part of one thing. And so we bring that in and we can pull on this deep, deep history in a place that's been a named place for 250 years and still be looking into the future and into growth across, a number of different industries.
Yeah.
It's a cool piece. And it's not something I thought I would be talking about when I became a historian,
Yeah.
but I do a lot.
Well, I feel like we could just sit here for days talking about everything about Lexington and every business and everything. For those that want to come to the museum, what are the hours? What all is the offerings?
Yeah.
How can people come and check out more?
You can see us Thursdays and Fridays 12 to 4 and Saturdays 10 to 4. Just walk in. There is a small admission fee. If you have a larger group, if you want to do a corporate outing, something like that, we are available for private tours Monday through Friday. Give me a call, 859-440-1582. And then we are also willing to come to you. So you can reach out via our website, which is lexhistory.org, and let us know something you're interested in, or if there's a piece of Lexington that you have a question about. And we're happy to respond as we can. And then you can learn more, again, on our website. We do participate in LexArts Gallery Hop and a number of other opportunities to come and see the museum in sort of off hours.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Not the history side, but is there anything about Lexington going forward that you're excited about, or like future things you hope to be able to do with the museum?
Yeah. I do think we're sitting in a really incredible moment for Lexington. This 250th anniversary is a truly not once in a lifetime. Like, we're going to have other anniversaries, but it is this really exciting moment to think not just about where we've been, but where we can go. So I'm thrilled and so excited to see the ways that Central Bank Center is changing, who's coming in, and those sorts of things. I'm super excited of some of the art that's coming to Lexington and the stories that we can tell that way. And I'm really hopeful that will continue to drive growth in business and folks coming I don't want to become Nashville, but like more people can come, just not millions of people. But bringing more people into Lexington because we have this really livable city. And that is something we talk about a lot with the museum is, not everybody's a historian, not everybody's a history buff or really interested in history, but having a town that values culture and that values things like the history museum, like art museums, makes them a livable town, which makes it a town that people want to relocate to.
Yeah.
Because there would be something for their kids or for their grandma when they visit or for whatever else. And so as we continue to grow, I hope that we're able to keep that at the forefront of people's minds, that just because it's not your cup of tea, it is good for the city. And that we can continue to tell more of those stories that aren't told. So one thing that is missing in the permanent exhibit is the immigrant experience in Lexington. We don't have a lot on that, but Lexington's been a city of immigrants since the very beginning. There are French-speaking folks who come into Lexington in the 1790s. Like we've been multicultural for a very long time, and we need to do a better job of that. But particularly now, when the city is so diverse, when Swahili is the third most spoken language, we need to be able to meet that moment, and so that is one of the places that I look for.
Swahili is the third most spoken
Swahili
language.
is the third most spoken language. Yeah. English, Spanish, Swahili.
I would have never thought that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. Usually when I think of like the other cultures that I see a lot is like the Hispanic, and then like I know a lot of Ukrainians are here, but I wouldn't have thought Swahili.
Yeah, I would have guessed maybe Indian or Ukrainian, maybe even Japanese because of Toyota's influence, but not Swahili.
Yep.
That is kind of mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling. I think the Fayette County Public Schools have 35 languages represented within their schools.
Wow.
It is.
What
we
is
are
the
an
draw
international
of
city.
Swahili?
There's a large East African refugee population in Fayette County. Lexington's been a site of refuge for people for a very long time, but right now it's predominantly Ukrainians and folks from sort of sub-Saharan Africa. So it's just where we are. And it's incredible to think about Lexington as this really international city. The university is also a huge draw.
Yeah.
Right? The large international population, particularly in the graduate studies, who bring their families and stay. And so that's who we are. And it is our responsibility as a museum, I feel, to tell that whole story. And we're not, we haven't done it yet. And part of why that's not done is we don't have the objects to do it yet. Because the thing about history that I love to tell people about is that we're all living it every day. Like everything we're doing is part of being historical, but we don't think about it. So, these families who are just living their lives and have been here for 30 years, but weren't born here or whatever it may have been, aren't thinking that they've made history in Lexington.
Right.
It maybe that, it's not about, it doesn't matter. It deeply matters. Those things matter. And so getting the chance to do more of that work I'm really excited about going forward.
I'm glad you pointed that out because it honestly bothers me a lot of times when people just in general don't take things seriously. Like you don't have to take everything seriously, but your story matters and it can impact the community.
That's right.
And I saw something that Jordan Peterson posted not too long ago, and he mentioned something about people don't feel like they're good enough because they don't set low enough expectations. And if you really think about it, you don't have to go from an F to an A overnight. Let's just focus on that 1% better.
That's right.
So you could be bettering yourself by not hitting snooze. And the time that you would be hitting snooze, you're being productive with something. You could better yourself by picking up a piece of trash. Like there's so many little things that you could like go and be like, well, I would have just walked by that trash before, but now I did. So like you can think of yourself as a better person. Like you are a better person. Just set your expectations a little bit lower and realize the small things that you can do to like impact the greater community. And so many people undersell themselves and then just don't give a crap because I don't know why, but they just do. And it's really sad to see, because I work with a lot of people in the young generation and I work with, a lot of adults who this might be their best job. And if your best job at age 35 or 40 is a grill cook at Culver's, like that isn't the best you can be, in my opinion. Like you can strive for more. And I want to see them strive for more. And some people, you just can't get them out of that mindset, you know? And we want to have the greatest, you know, workplace for them, for wherever they're at. But why can't you be a manager? Why not strive to own your own home someday? You know, like you can try and you can do it, because I've seen people at their lowest of lows and crawl out of that. And what they did have an impact, and it does matter.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think, you know, to the fault of historians and a lot of other folks, we do tend to pull the most unique, the person on the highest pedestal. But in reality, our cities, our towns, our everyday lives are deeply impacted by you doing your thing. And many of these folks who are now idolized through historical lenses were just doing their lives. We just know that they were doing it and can see, looking backwards, that it was this really incredible thing. At the time, they were living, right? Like they didn't know it was going to be incredible. Maybe some of them thought it could be, but maybe not, right? And they certainly didn't know if it was going to work.
Right.
And so I think one of those really important things, particularly about local history, is exactly what you're saying. Gives real life examples of folks going through their days, doing their everyday, that have then shaped the course of who we are.
A great example of that is someone we had on the podcast, Bob Peterson. They created a homeschool co-op in Lexington. And the original vision of it was they had a kid that was homeschooled, and they wanted a community for him. And so they just started having people over at their house to like play board games and stuff that were other homeschoolers. And that was it. Like if they would have set the bar at, we want to build a homeschool program that has 450 students enrolled in it. No, like that would have never happened. Right. But they just wanted to have a small community of other homeschool families for their kid to like make friends and stuff. And it turned into this like awesome thing with like, they have baseball and basketball and soccer and track and field and all these sports now, and this community that they've built. And now they've removed themselves and it's self-sustaining, but it's like just something small that they decided like, hey, we want other homeschool families to feel included. And that turned into this awesome thing that is impacting a lot of families in Lexington. And like things that we do matter.
Right. That's exactly right.
Well, is there anything else you want to highlight before we sign off?
No, thank you for the time and great conversation. I hope you'll come visit us.
Yeah. We'll have to check it out soon.
This has been great. I mean, I feel like I could talk all day and not get bored of talking about these stories. And also, you got to be the first guest in our new studio.
It's incredible.
So if anyone's looking on YouTube, you can see our new studio here. But it was great to have you in here today.
Thanks for having me.